What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your M25 wireless Bluetooth MIDI keyboard. It comes in two colors, so you have the black one right here, and it also comes in a standard blue color, but the setup for each is the exact same. Along with the keyboard, you also get a USB cable to either charge the keyboard or connect it to your computer. So because we can use our controller wirelessly through Bluetooth, it means we can set it up to any computer, whether it's a MacBook like this one here, or a PC, which we're going to show you later on. So first, let's go over how to set it up to our MacBook here. First thing I'm going to want to do is turn on the controller using the on and off button on the back. So I'm going to hold it down to turn it on. Now remember, another way we can set up our keyboard to our computer is by using the included USB cable. So you're just going to plug the USB-C end into your keyboard, then you're going to plug the other end into your computer, and now you should be able to use the keyboard with your computer. So if we're trying to use the MIDI controller with our DAW like Logic here, we're actually going to want to go further than connecting it through Bluetooth on the computer. So for this, we're actually going to want to go into the audio and MIDI settings of our computer. And if you can't find it right away, you can go to the Finder tool here, look up Audio MIDI Setup, and just click on it to open it up. So at this point, we're not seeing the controller show up just yet. So if we want to find it, we're going to go to the Window tab over here, click on Show MIDI Studio, and open that up. So at the MIDI Studio here, we're going to see all of these devices, but what we're going to want to do is go to this Bluetooth icon here, and click on Configure Bluetooth. And then this is where you're gonna see the M25 show up. So if you see the action that says connect, you're gonna click on that to connect the keyboard to your computer. And after that, you're gonna see it highlighted on our MIDI setup here, letting us know that we're good to go. And we can even test it out real quick to see if it's working. There we go, we're good to go. So that's how we're going to want to do it on a Mac, but now let's check out how to do it on a PC. Now we can also connect our keyboard with a PC. So to do that, we're going to go into the Bluetooth settings of our PC here. When this tab opens up, we're going to go to Show Bluetooth Devices. Once it brings us to the Bluetooth settings here, we can click on Add Bluetooth or Other Device. Click on Bluetooth here because we're trying to pair our Bluetooth device, our keyboard. From here, you're going to search for the device that reads M25 and click on it to pair. And once it says your device is ready to go, that means we're all set. So now let's take a look at some of the controls, inputs, and outputs for the controller. So starting on the back here, we have the on and off button to turn on or turn off the keyboard. We have the 3.5mm MIDI output, so we can send MIDI from our controller out to a piece of hardware like another synth. Then we have the Type-C port where we can plug in the included USB cable to charge the keyboard or to set it up to our computer. And then we have the sustain pedal input, so we can set up a sustain pedal to the keyboard. Now moving on to the top here where we have all of our controls, starting with the thumbstick here. This is what we can use to shift the pitch or the modulation of whatever instrument we're playing. So for example, I can play a note right here. If I want to shift the pitch up, I can move it to the right. There we go, pitches it up, then back to the middle. And I can shift the pitch down by moving it to the opposite direction. Down. And then we can move the stick up and down to change the modulation. Underneath we have the arpeggiator, so we can arpeggiate the chords that we're playing. So for example, I can turn it on, and now if I play a chord, you hear the arpeggio start to go. Then we have the tap tempo where we can change the speed of the arpeggio. So if I were to play that chord again, and then use the tap tempo, see, it starts to become faster. If you ever want to turn the tap tempo off, you just have to hold it down until the light disappears. What's also cool is that we can use these knobs over here on the other side to manipulate the arpeggio. To do this, we'll want to hold down the arpeggio button, and then from here we can use the knobs to adjust the arpeggio. So we can use this first knob here to adjust the division of the arpeggio. So for example, I can change it anywhere from 1/8 to a 1/16 triplet and have it sound something like this. We also have a swing feature to change the swing of the arpeggio, so we can either give it no swing and make it sound like this, or we can dial it to about 75%, let's say, and give it this amount of swing. We can also use the mode knob to adjust how the arpeggio will be played back. We have a few different settings for this, so we have the up setting where the notes will go from lowest to highest. We have the down setting where it will start high and then go low. Then we have exclusive, inclusive, order, or random, so you can go ahead and experiment with any of these. Next, we have the octave knob to adjust the octave of the arpeggio. So for example, I can set it to octave 4, and now when I play the arpeggio, you're hearing it go through all of the different octaves. Then we have the latch knob, which is really cool because if we set this to on, we can play the arpeggio and let go, and then it will continue going. Next, we have the sync knob where we can set whether we want this sync to be internal or external. You'd only want to use external if you're using another device to set the arpeggio or tempo. And then we have the plus and minus buttons to change the speed of the arpeggio. So I'm going to play the chord again. And now I can use this knob to speed it up. See, it's getting faster. And I can slow it down. Slowing. Now remember, in case the knobs aren't working with the arpeggio, you have to hold down the arpeggio button, and then you can use the knobs to adjust the arpeggio. Underneath the arpeggiator, we have the octave buttons, so we can change the octave of the instrument. So for example, we're set in this octave right now, and then I can bring the octave lower, see, or I can bring it up higher. Underneath, we have the transpose buttons to switch the key of the notes. So for example, if I'm playing this chord, it sounds completely normal, sounds standard, but I can press transpose up, and then you can hear that the note has shifted a half step. And then I can keep going, whole step, half, etc. Then we can go the opposite direction and transpose down. So again, this is standard. Press transpose down. Then went down a half step, and then down whole, and so on. These are also touch sensitive, which means if I press it soft, it's gonna be a very low velocity, soft note. But if I play it harder, get high velocity, louder note. Then we have the full level button, which will play the notes of our drum pad at full velocity. So for example, I can press the button here, and now this way, no matter how soft I play, the note's gonna come out at full velocity. Cool, so now moving on, we have the drum pads in the middle. We can use this to trigger our drum sounds or other samples depending on the instrument we have set up here. So for example, if I press them right now, you're gonna hear the keyboard, but that's just because I have the keyboard set up on our track here. Next, we have the display right in the middle. This is gonna tell us the battery life of the keyboard, our programs and our settings, the BPM, etc. Next, we have the loop button, so we can make a loop track based on the notes we're playing. So for example, I'm gonna hold down the loop button, then I'm gonna play something, and then it plays back. And then whenever you want it to stop, you're just gonna press the loop button again. Next, we have the note repeat button, which works with our drum pads here. So if we press this button and hold down a note, you'll hear the note start to repeat. We can also use the division, swing, and plus and minus knobs to adjust the playback of the note repeat. Just like with the arpeggiator, we have to hold down the note repeat button in order to use these knobs. So for example, I can hold down note repeat and switch the division to 1/16 triplet. And now if I hold down the note, you'll hear it in that triplet. We can do the same thing with the swing, so I can hold down note repeat and bring the swing up to about 65%. There you go. And then I can adjust the BPM of the note repeat by holding down the note repeat button. And then I'm going to increase the speed. And now if I play it, you'll hear it faster. Next we have the bank A-B button to switch between the different banks for our drum pads. So in bank A, you got these notes. Then in bank B, you have these notes. Next we have the controller setting button to configure these knobs up here to a specific MIDI CC message. We're gonna go more in depth with this later on, but if we hold down the controller setting button and raise knob number 1 here, we're gonna be changing the MIDI CC message. Then we have the drum setting button where we can configure the drum pads here to a specific MIDI note message. Again, we'll go more in depth with this later, but if you hold this button down, you'll see all of the drum pads start to light up. Then to change the note, you're actually gonna use these knobs here, and you're gonna use the corresponding knob that matches with the pad. So for example, if you're trying to edit pad 1, you're gonna use knob 1 over here. So we can use them to adjust the arpeggiator, we can use them to adjust the note repeat, and we can even assign these knobs to specific functions inside of our DAW, but we're gonna be going over that later on. And you can even assign these knobs to different controls inside of your DAW, and we're gonna be going over that in just a sec. So we have all 8 of these knobs here that have different functions within the keyboard itself, but we can also assign these knobs to have different functions within our DAW. Now real quick, I just want to clarify that assigning these knobs will vary from DAW to DAW. So for example, doing this on Logic Pro X is going to be different from doing it in Ableton, Pro Tools, etc. So to do this in whatever DAW you're using, you'll want to look up how to get to the controller assignment feature within the DAW. So real quick, before doing anything on Logic Pro X, we're actually gonna wanna go to our computer here and set each knob to different MIDI CC messages. There are standard CC messages that you can set each knob to. We're gonna touch on that later on, but for right now, we need to set each knob to a different MIDI CC message so that each knob can work independently. Because if they're set to the same CC message, they're gonna be doing the same function on your DAW, and we don't want that. So that each knob works independently inside of your DAW, because if they're all set to the same CC message, then they're gonna be doing the same exact function on your DAW, and you may not want that for each knob. Okay, so to do this, we're gonna hold down the controller settings button here. I'm gonna start with knob number 1, and I'm just gonna set this to 000. Cool. Now we just brought the camera over here, so now you can see the keyboard and see exactly what we're gonna be doing. So to assign the CC message for each knob, we're gonna hold down the controller setting button like this. Then from here, we can set each knob to their own CC message. So for example, we're gonna go to knob number 1. We're just gonna set it all the way to 000. So we're gonna do the same exact thing for knob 2. So hold down controller setting, and for knob 2, let's just set it to 002. Knob 3, we're gonna do the same thing, controller setting. Let's set this to 004, and we'll go in 2s for the rest. So knob 4, I'm gonna set that to 006, knob 5 to 008, knob 6 to 010, knob 7 to 012, and knob 8 to 016. So now each of these knobs will work independently from each other when we have it all set up in our DAW. So speaking of which, let's now assign each of our knobs to a function on our DAW. For this example, I'm going to open up the instrument I have set up here. So we have a clav instrument. So what I'm gonna do is assign each knob to some functions on my instrument, and then I'm going to assign some knobs to the mixer here on my DAW. So on Logic Pro X, we can get to the controller assignment window by pressing Command L. From here we have an open slate, so we can assign any of these knobs to control any of the functions for the instrument. So to get started, I'm going to go to the controller assignments window and click on Learn Mode. And now with Learn Mode activated, I can click on any of the controls here inside of my DAW and assign those controls to a knob here on the controller. So for example, let's say I wanted to set the volume for my instrument to knob number 1 on my controller. I'm gonna click on the volume here on the instrument, just like this. You'll see then on the window that it says no message received for the level for our clav, which is our instrument. So it's just waiting to be assigned by a knob on our controller. So now I can go to knob 1 and start to move it. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that it says control learned, and the parameter here says the level for the clav. And now if I use knob 1, you'll see on the instrument the level going up and down. And now if I use knob 1, you'll see the level going up and going down on the instrument. And then we can just follow the same exact steps to assign the rest of the knobs. So let's say I wanted to use the brilliance control here on the instrument and use that with knob 2. I'm gonna click on the brilliance control, and we can do the same exact thing to assign the rest of our knobs to a function on our DAW. So let's say I wanted to set the brilliance knob here on the instrument to knob number 2 on the controller. I'm gonna click on brilliance here on the instrument, and now if I move knob 2, you'll then see that the control is learned, and I can use knob 2 to control the brilliance of the instrument. So to see it in action here, I'm gonna play on my keyboard. Then I'm gonna use knob 1 to control the level, bringing it down. You'll hear it go down. And I can bring it back up. And you hear it coming back up. We can also assign these knobs for the controls within our mixer here. For example, I'm gonna set the pan knob for my instrument to knob number 3 on my controller. So again, to do that, I'm gonna click on Learn Mode here. I'm then gonna click on the pan control for my instrument track. Then I'm gonna move knob 3. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that the control is learned. So now if I play, I can move knob 3 to the right, pans over to the right, and then to the left, to pan to the left. Really cool stuff. So possibilities are truly endless, whether you want to assign all of these knobs to a specific instrument or to controls inside of your mixer. You can really do anything, but like I said, just make sure to research how to get to the control assignments mode in whatever DAW that you're using. Another thing I want to point out is right off the bat, these controls are set to standard MIDI CC messages. The controller itself comes with this guide with the standard MIDI control CC messages, but it's really important to note that these standard MIDI controls may not translate to whatever DAW that you're using. Again, you may need to research whether that be the case or not with whatever DAW you're using, which is exactly why I set each of my knobs here to specific controls within my DAW. But if these messages work within your DAW and you want to set your knobs to those messages, all you have to do is hold down the controller setting button, use this guide to get to a specific control. So for example, I can set this to 007 for the volume control. But again, remember that these messages may not work with the DAW that you're using, so you may need to research that, and if not, remember you can always assign these knobs to whatever control you want inside of your DAW. Now we also have a way of assigning each pad to a specific drum sound or a note on our instrument depending on which one we're using in our DAW. We first have to understand how to edit the drum sound on our pad here. So to do that, we're gonna look for the drum setting button here, and if we hold that down, you'll see all of the drum pads start to light up. So to edit these pads, we're actually gonna be using these knobs here on the side, and each knob corresponds with the pad. So for example, knob number 1 here is gonna be used to edit pad 1 over here. Knob number 2 is gonna be used to edit pad 2, and so on and so forth. So if we're working with pad 1, we're going to assign the note of pad 1 using knob number 1 here, and we can use the knob, and we have all of these different numbers here to choose from. And you may be wondering how these numbers translate to the drum sound or the note that we're trying to hit, but there is an answer to that. There is a way to find out how these numbers translate to MIDI notes, and for that we're going to refer to the MIDI note key number chart. We're gonna show it right here on screen so you can take a picture and follow along. I actually found it helpful to open up the MIDI keyboard down here as well, so I knew which note activated which drum sound. So for example, C1 right here is gonna be our kick drum, then we have the snare right next to that, and so on and so forth. So if we know C1 is the MIDI note for our kick drum, I can look at my chart here. I'm gonna find the C note right here on top, and then to get to C1, I'm gonna look down this octave side here until I see number 1, and then if I look to where the C column is, I'll find that the number that corresponds with that MIDI note is 36. So with that, we know what number to set pad number 1 to activate the kick drum. So let's try that out. I'm gonna hold down the drum setting button here, then I'm gonna use knob 1 to adjust pad 1, and like we said, 36 is gonna be the number for the kick drum sound. And now if I play the pad, you'll see that we have the kick drum. So using that same system, let's use pad 2 as a snare drum. So again, we're going to go to the MIDI keyboard here. We're gonna look for that snare. There it is right there. So that's actually gonna be D1, as we know by looking at this chart here. So it goes C1, C2, C3, etc. I can then go to the chart here and look for D right on top, and then I'm going to go down to the 1 octave, and then I'm gonna land on the number 38. So with that, we know what number to set pad 2 to. So to edit pad 2, again, I'm gonna hold down the drum setting button, then I'm gonna use knob number 2 to edit pad number 2, and we're going to set this to the number 38. And now if I play pad number 2, we got the snare drum. So you can follow this process to assign the rest of the drums to your pads here, and then you can do the same exact thing on bank B by pressing bank B and following the same steps. To make this easier, I also like to have my MIDI keyboard down here open, and if we take a look at it, you'll see that all of these notes here on the keyboard co-align with a drum sound. So for example, C1 is our kick, then we have D1 right next to that as our snare center, and so on and so forth. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your M25, but of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.